It's a meditation. You're bringing everybody to one place. We're all having the same taste. You came from all over the place. You're thinking different things. You're coming from different pressures or whatever. Let's all get on the same page. We're going to have barbecue.
Fade in. Cut to.
Exterior. Interior.
Restaurant?
Bar. Club.
Day.
Night.
Action! Guys, welcome to what's going to be, I've already heard it, but you have not, what's going to be an outstanding interview and an outstanding episode of Restaurant Fiction. That's right. Now, before we even get to it or even tell you what Restaurant Fiction is or who am I, please give us a rating on iTunes. Hopefully 5 stars if you liked it. If you didn't, don't review us at all. But if you did, 5 stars on iTunes or wherever you heard this Restaurant Fiction episode. Well, anyway, why are you even listening to Restaurant Fiction? This is the podcast that reviews every single fictional restaurant, bar, and club in TV and film, as well as talk about the screenwriting process. And today's episode is only part 1. Yes, in about 2 weeks from now, you will also listen to part 2. The reason why is because there were loads and loads of content that our guest today is Kip Konwiser. And Kip Konwiser, why is he on? Well, besides producing so many movies, I cannot name them all. He is actually an aficionado on not just barbecue, but Alabama barbecue. That's right. You see, our crew of Restaurant Fiction, we went all the way to Tuskegee, I hope I am pronouncing that right, Alabama, to experience the barbecue scene there. We took Kip with us. Yes, he was a producer on the HBO film Miss Evers' Boys. Now, Miss Evers' Boys is not about food. It is actually drama, a very heavy drama. But in screenwriting, writers always talked about the midpoint. The midpoint is almost like a false positive, that you think the heroine, the protagonist, has won, or it's the moment of brevity, but really, in essence, the heroine has a lot to learn. That is almost like the peak before the dynamic fall. And in Miss Evers' Boys, the truest moment of brevity, or the false reward, but also the cleansing of the soul moment, the big, huge midpoint moment, is the barbecue scene. And we brought Kip on with us to talk about that and so much more. Now, without any further ado, here is a quick review on the barbecue at Alabama and our interview with Kip. Enjoy. Awesome. Cool. Well, without further ado, let's get this going. Guys, welcome back to Restaurant Fiction. I'm your host. This is Monis Rose, and today we are talking with Kip Konwiser because Kip went down with us to Alabama for their barbecue. Now, first of all, let me explain something about Alabama and Alabama barbecue. It's all about the baptism. Yes, the baptism. Now, not in the religious sense. No, not. You don't have to be a member of clergy to do the baptism. You don't need to be a devout this, a devout that to have a baptism. Really, what I'm talking about is there is a certain kind of baptism in Alabama with their barbecue where you have to use your fingers. You use like maybe your pointer finger and your middle finger and your thumb, and you tear off a piece of pork or you tear off a piece of barbecue and you just plunge it in the white sauce. It's like a mayonnaise-based sauce. That is really what an Alabama baptism is. That was also featured in the barbecue scene in Miss Evers' Boys. The barbecue, it's like a juke joint from a distance. And what do I mean by that? It's almost like an outdoorsy shack with a very welcoming vibe. That it's very comfortable, but it's, we thought it was about the music when we went. But when we learned that it was more about the food, more about the barbecue, Well, guess what? For us, dancing is so overrated. Let's eat. Basically, is what we're saying. Um, what else? What can we say about though the barbecue of Alabama? Well, it is tangy. Obviously, it is vinegar based. You're going to get it very similar to North Carolina. And also, what's great about the barbecue joint is that there is like a legacy. There is tradition there that barbecue goes back for 100 years. It was brought over by the Africans, and you get a sense of that, especially here in this juke joint type of place. Before we end this review, just a little note. Don't bring a first date here. Like, don't, I mean, personally, that's, this is debatable. But I mean, if you do, it is barbecue. And if it goes well, which I hope it does, well, guess what? Then you really have a winner. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Anyway, Kip, what'd you think of that little quick review on the juke joint, the Alabama barbecue, Miss Evers' Boys, the barbecue scene? What feedback do you have?
Spot on, man. You got it right. Exactly correct. Alabama barbecue is all about the dipping. It's all about the fingers. It's all about going to the place that when they're serving the barbecue, it is about the food. And you're correct. Once the food's consumed, people lay back for a little bit, the sun goes down, and the music comes out. And that same place becomes the juke joint. And people dance and go nuts and drink, and the moonshine that's made in the back is also part of what that is. It's replaced from the beer and the cider that they serve with the barbecue. And then the next morning when everyone wakes up, someone's cleaned everything up, and oftentimes that same place was the church. This is a big deal. You're not just eating the sacrament, if you will, of the animal that you raised, but you're literally imbibing, imbuing, and diving into the culture through the food in a religious experience all the way through the weekend. So barbecue is a celebration. And for Miss Evers' Boys, we chose that scene quite specifically and intentionally for a lot of the reasons you outlined, Moni, really, is that at that point in the movie, it's about late second act, early part of second act. So in other words, if you're in about fourth or fifth sequence. And it's a scene where Miss Evers and Caleb, her love interest from ever since she was in elementary school, they're finally getting the chance after 20 plus years of growing up apart. And because of all the socioeconomic pressures of being black in the South in the 30s, they never got the chance to have any part of their love. But this one night, this one dinner, that he summons the courage to pick her up at her house, confront her father who doesn't want her dating a field hand, and he takes her to the spot, the place where anyone who you want to be there on your first date, you want to be seen, you want people to say, hey, we're stepping out, we're not hiding tonight. And that's where they go. And it's a beautiful scene between two people who the tragedy of the film is they're never going to fall in love. They could have, they would have, they should have. They'd probably be beautiful parents and have all the right values of the things that we would appreciate and understand. At this point in the movie, we really do get that. But at the end of the scene, they have a kiss. It's as sexual as anything in the movie. It is their consummation of their relationship. She gets out of the car like a schoolgirl. He looks at her that same way. She goes into the house and we think, this is going to be a romance. This is going to be beautiful. And we cut immediately. The next line is the white doctor from the U.S. government telling the black doctor that the program has lost its funding. And that is an emotional apex in the movie. From that point forward, when they've lost their funding, all of the vulnerability and the love and the authenticity that Nurse Rivers Eunice shares with Caleb, her new love, is now going to be a lie because they're not funded. And she doesn't have the heart to tell him. And this is what's so powerful about the movie. And honestly, what makes barbecue and food so powerful at the heart of it all is that our relationships to each other are born out of these very tactile things, which is we start off with the best of intentions for each other, and we align resources to execute them, and then we congratulate that fact, which is worthy and great. And then incrementally, due to pressures, we can oftentimes turn 180 degrees from where we had fully intended when we started. Many times, not even through our own and new intentions. And that's what happens here. And it's tragic. And it's a repetitive cycle. And it's human nature. And it's a result of fear, a lack of dependence on education, a lack of dissemination of communication. And all of those things, those three things I just listed that are the pillars of this destruction, all melt away in some good barbecue.
What's your best memory making Miss Evers' voice?
I think my best memory is probably the antithesis of what people would think. Miss Evers became the most awarded movie in the history of television. And we spent 6 years having our ass handed to us by everybody telling us we're not going to make that movie here. And the we in this case is my brother, Kern, and I. Miss Evers is the result of Kern being a student at Cornell University. His professor, David Feldchow, wrote the play in a workshop that was the class Kern was taking as part of his theater arts degree at Cornell. We're very proud of the fact that this came from academia. This came from great intentions. This came, frankly, from a white Jewish emergency room doctor who's just really progressive and educated. And it demonstrates that your skin color is meaningless, which is at the core of what Evers is all about. It's about perspective. So I'm most proud, I think, of the fact that we took this thing that everyone for years and years said should never, will never, can never get made. But I love you guys, and you can work here, or we've got another movie for you, or gee, it's so cute. You guys are brothers, and you work together, and you're tap dancers, and people would go off on us, and we had a real career. We've had a real career. We've had a career going into 4 decades. But Miss Evers was one of those that everyone resisted. So my memory that's best is the fact that my brother and I are like Butch and Sundance, and we will get this shit done, and we get it done for the right reasons. We were raised by enormously fabulous parents in a rarefied situation of resources, and it's our responsibility to share those. So that's what I'm most proud of, is we resisted that daily temptation to give up, and it was a huge success. It defined us. It defined still many people.
Where do you get that persistence to not give up?
I think there's something burning inside of a person's gut or not that says, I am yet to have been defined by these circumstances. I refuse to allow your decision to be that which is the one that will define this relationship. And I believe in the term professional persistence, which is persistence is great. It's a fabulous attribute to the extent you keep it professional. And I pushed that to a real extreme. Miss Evers is a great example. HBO passed on that 3 times over the course of years. And the head of HBO, as they changed, I would, honestly, frankly, I cornered the head of HBO in a hotel room hallway and kind of physically almost intimidated him to stop passing on this thing and pay attention, which he didn't. He still passed. And it wasn't until I was able to convince, to tell the truth, just to drop names and just say it, because like, what the hell, we all are not going to be living forever anyway. I had to convince Whoopi Goldberg to go back into HBO because she was a big deal and tell them to pay attention to this. And I did that by convincing Ted Danson, who was dating her at the time, that he could score real points with her because they were on the outs if he talked about the Tuskegee study, that as a black woman, she would really respond and respect that. And she did, and he did, and to his credit and their relationship's credit, they fought for the little guy, which was me and my brother. And HBO wanted nothing to do with this project. They believed that the expansion of pay subscription television had nothing to do with African American audiences, that they would not be where the expansion was. They were going into much more rural and suburban type areas than urban, and their programming shows it. Prior to Miss Evers, you can see it. I'm not making it up. They didn't want any part of it. And Colin Callender started HBO New York, and that was the more progressive side, the more movie side. And he had some really brilliant executives there. Frank Dolger and Carrie Putnam, among others, who are still kicking ass and doing great things. These are great people. So it took that collection to get around this show, but only after Whoopi kind of threatened them that the only way that you'll ever talk to me is if you guys pay attention to Miss Evers. And then they stumbled over themselves and made the deal with me. And they refused still to get the script made unless I got Fishburne involved, and that's a whole other story. I'm proud of the fact we just never give up, because our identity is not done until we say it is. And that's got to be your instinct in this industry. I think this has to be your instinct in life. Otherwise, you're going to have your own ceiling over your head. But if you wake up and accept what other people are saying about your efforts, you're done. You can't do it. You just can't. And if you've got a significant relationship like I have with my brother that you can lean on, you've got a real gift. And that's really the core of it for me.
Is barbecue a good first date idea?
Absolutely. Anything you can eat with your hands is a really good idea on a first date. Really. You're trying to get sensual here. So if if you can look good doing it, and there's something about slurping on your own fingers, it's sensual. It brings you close. I love the scene in Evers when she kind of relaxes and giggles and she throws her food and messes with her dress. It's because the food is sloppy. She can be sloppy. So heck yeah, man.
Being real with me, Kip, would you have even considered that to be the first date with your significant other, when you were in the courting process?
You have no idea what you stumbled into. My first date with my wife, Kim, who I've been married now, we're going into 25 years. I met her when I snuck into the Independent Spirit Awards with the script literally up my ass and a suit coat over it, pretending to be a volunteer for the Spirit Awards, and they accepted me so that I could get the script to Fishburne. Because where I just left that last bit of the HBO saying, we're not going to do it unless you get Fishburne to star. And his manager was saying no. So I snuck into the Spirit Awards. And I looked nice. So they gave me this job, and I was suddenly the host. And this haughty girl walks in with these two very handsome guys, and I circled that table. I'm like, I'm getting back to that later. So my whole mission was to get this script to Fishburne. And there's this very famous back and forth with us. Back in the room, if you know the Spirit Awards, they serve dinner. So here we go with like restaurant. And we're back in the restaurant area at the Spirit Awards because Fishburne's going to give me 3 minutes with him as I harassed his manager so much, and I snuck in and I scared them, honestly. And so we're backstage, and people are escorting food around, and he's going, the word shit was used as a verb, an adjective, and noun. He's like, what is this shit, man? I'm the shit, and I'm supposed to be out there doing shit. And I'm like, well, if you're the shit, this shit is the real shit you're supposed to be doing. We went back and forth with this. So he's, all right, just give me the script. So I gave it to him. And that's how this movie got made. And I was so thrilled with myself that I had the confidence to go back to that girl. And so after the awards, they have an after party, and I was in line with that girl, and we were sharing this conversation with our favorite movie star, which we didn't know was our favorite at the time, Julianne Moore, because we were just waiting in line. So we're both just on cloud nine. We get in, we have a margarita, we talk, we stay up. She tells me she's engaged. We can't get together. I was working for the Grateful Dead at the time. I was running Mickey Hart's company down here in LA. And so I gave her my business card and said, good luck to you. She leaves a message for me, and she says, if you're really terrific, and someday things will work out great for you, I can tell. And I star 69, and I called her and I said, do you want to go have a cup of coffee? So my first meal with my wife was at 5 a.m., and we went and had some coffee. She went and had that coffee with me. She never went back to the other guy, and we've been together ever since. A few days later, Fishburne calls and says, holy shit, you're not full of shit. This shit's really good. I'll do it. And that changed HBO's history. We had nominated 15 Emmy Awards, and my whole honeymoon was the limousine rides and first-class plane tickets all over as we won everything from Bill Clinton inviting us to the White House to interviews throughout everything for a year and a half. That was our honeymoon, was Miss Evers Boys. So how's that for a first meal, baby?
What are the challenges in producing a film, though, set in the past?
Sure. Well, Miss Evers Boys and producing is very much like being a parent. I am one. I'm a father. And truly, when I wake up, my first thought is not as a producer. It's as a parent, as a father, thinking about your child. This is what my relationship is to all my movies. And at this point, we've done over 70 movies and television shows and music products and things like that. And they're each a child. Miss Evers was absolutely no different. In fact, it was one of the first children that I really was mine. So we did everything. I mean, we took this from a play and converted it from a play into a screenplay and oversaw that development. In doing that, we condensed about 600 participants in the Tuskegee study to just these 4 men and did hours and hours of interviews with the real nurse and converted that into a single perspective. So we really brought the point of view of the story to the story and then fought for that point of view as others tried to change it, which of course people do all the time. I sold it to HBO. So I sold it to HBO, as I just told you, basically like browbeating them to death. And then I got the cast on board, as I told you, by sneaking in and crawling in windows and stuff like that. So that's how that happened. And then I got the director on board because it was an HBO project, and Joe Sargent is a profile guy, and he's a smart, first-class man who recognized an opportunity. So that was kind of easy, if you will, at that point. Now into pre-production, I scouted the film, I found locations, I oversaw the budget and the scheduling, I ran physical. Derek Kavanaugh was our line producer, but he reported to me and to our executive producer, Bob Benedetti. And Bob Benedetti was very involved in this movie as well. He was the mommy, I was the daddy, or however you want to see that. On this whole process all the way through, he ran Ted Danson's company, and Bob is an extraordinary dramaturge and author. So this was a real great piece of material for Bob to bite off on. So we were a great team. We really developed well. And then through production, we oversaw everything, post-production all the way through. I was there through the editing room on every cut and every decision. And in the marketing, HBO kicks ass. You know, it's a real privilege to be involved with HBO, and I'm sure it still is. And we've had the privilege of working with them off and on. But man, at that time, they were really, really growing their marketing machine. And they could get you in anywhere. I mean, we screened at the White House. We screened across the country. I won the NAACP Image Award for Best Picture, which I think is the only time a non-African American has done that. And that is, the movie's great, but the marketing, man, oh man, do those guys work. And HBO did that. We got to get in the bus. They drove it. They built the bus and drove it. And that's a great privilege that everyone listening should have sometime in their career.
So you did all this research. You with the interviews and all of that. How much actually research went into the barbecue?
A lot. Alabama barbecue is a big deal. When you're going to have a scene that is your happiest scene, I'm glad you said, let's go lighter now, because it's true. Miss Evers is not like a comedy, so, it gets dark. But this is as good as it gets. You want to pick some place that's emblematic of as good as it gets, and it was instant that it was barbecue. I don't think there was any question. Because, like I said, the barbecue place turns into the juke joint, turns into the church. And that tradition, actually, and the tradition of barbecue, respectfully, I don't know if it comes from Africa as much as it comes from South America, which is where the African slave ships 400 years ago brought their traditions into South America. And that's where candomblé and voodoo and santiera, and that's the idea of burying the animal so that the spirit comes up, and you burn the animal through the ground and the spirit comes up and you eat it. And that made its way into New Orleans and Congo Square, and that's what made itself over to Alabama. So that's where that tradition comes from, actually, is that South American candomblé, let's bury what's dead and eat the spirit of it. So, it's deep. It's great. And I think that was an easy choice for us, that had all the history and all the flavor and all the fun. And you didn't have to have a band playing. They could just say, which they do, oh, yeah, the band plays here at night. And tomorrow's at church. And they just say it. And if you know your shit, like, oh, that's exactly. These guys got it in one line. We don't have to. No more set pieces. It's really great. Super efficient filmmaking.
What are the challenges in producing a film, though, set in the past?
Oh, more and more every day. Contemporary buyers, I hear this every day. They really shy away from things in the past, and I think that's really too bad. I'm sure that will change, because I think that's a buyer mentality, not actually a consumer mentality. I have more faith in the consumer in that way. But there are challenges in keeping past stories to feel contemporary. The best antidote to that, or the solution for it, is to find archetypes in your characters. Great characters have similar relationships throughout time. The arena around them may change and some of those pressures, but a father-son relationship or a love story or whatever it is that we're really following through this narrative, those beats really don't change. And unfortunately, there's not enough development chops on a lot of buyers' skill palette, frankly, to understand when they're reading something, is the archetype available in this story? Can I bring it forward? Or, oh, it's set in 1957. I guess we can't make it because it's not contemporary. And having that knee-jerk, stupid reaction is a really textual reaction to the potential of great subtext. You have to know your story. You have to know your shit. You have to know dramaturgy. And you have to be able to reverse engineer an audience. And that's really a good answer. And that is that find your audience and where they're aggregating, and determine and define how it is, despite this story being told in the past, it's exactly spot on for your audience, your psycho, demographic, whatever it is, and reverse engineering a pattern by which you're going to market to them so they'll know about it. Awareness is everything. This is what HBO did so well. They made you aware. They still do. They make you aware of it. And even if something's garbage, if everyone's aware of it, it succeeds to a certain extent in the American pipeline. But if no one knows and it's fantastic, that's the tragedy.
If you were to produce your dream restaurant, what would that look like?
Well, my wife and I love food and eating out, and we have many, many memories of our relationship is through food and things like this. So one dream that I know would work is a Mexican restaurant, authentic Southern California Mexican food, which I grew up with. So I like the real deal Mexican food that tastes really great in Italy. In Italy, there's nothing but Italian food, and it's awesome. I love Italian food. It's great. But there's nothing but Italian food forever, and it's a romance culture. So bringing a romance cultural food into a romance culture that has yet to discover it in a progressive kind of area, particularly when their politics are pushing them even more progressively, I think it's a great idea. So I love the idea of bringing a fringe culture into the heart of one that didn't even recognize how close it was to that culture. And I think that's where the explosivity of food really it could belong. It's global.
So you're gonna say like, am I then? I'm just picturing this dream restaurant now. Am I getting like a breakfast burrito in Florence? Like am
Exactly.
I
Yes,
going to
you
like a
are.
small Tuscany town?
That's right. You're having chips and salsa, and you're a margarita, and and you have brick, and you have palazzos, and you're enjoying it, and you're like, this is great. I'm getting a good marg buzz going on, and I don't have to drink any more wine for a night.
You're onto something.
I know I am.
You're onto something. Oh my gosh, you better.
I know it's true. As
Yeah.
far as barbecue, I mean, I grew up on the beach in Corona del Mar and Laguna Beach, and barbecuing on the beach is always the best. So if I were to open up a barbecue restaurant, it would have to be beachfront, Southern California. We'd bury stuff in the sand right in front of where you surf during that day, and you'd smell it when you're in the water. That'd be great.
Kip, that was fucking awesome. It was so fucking awesome that we decided to put the rest of the interview in part 2. Part 2 will be released in 2 weeks from now. And buckle your seatbelts, guys, because it's going to be going in overdrive, because you're really going to hear of how Kip entered this business, and it is a wild, wild ride. And of all mentors out there to have words of wisdom, it is this gentleman. So please be on the lookout for that. And once again, if you want to experience more of Kip's works besides seeing Miss Evers' Boys on HBO, check out his IMDb and then download or stream or buy all of his work. Yes, he also teaches at Syracuse University, among other screenwriting facilities and screenwriting educational centers out there. So please Google him if you want to know more about Kip. Well, my name is Monis Rose, and if you want to know more about Restaurant Fiction, we have a slew of episodes on iTunes or wherever you listen to the Restaurant Fiction podcast. Also, if you're more of a reader, you can go to restaurantfiction.com. Well, guys, like I have been saying, my name is Monis Rose, and as always, keep it real, keep it fresh, and keep it on the flip side. Cut to.
Exterior, interior,
Restaurant?
bar, club,
Day.
Night.